Well, hello, boys and girls. So first, I want you to stop and think about a time when a teacher has mentioned something to you more than once. For example, in my class, I often remind my students when they come in, tonight your homework is to read chapter 4. And then, sometime during the class, again I may say, be sure when you're reading chapter 4 tonight, and then at the end of class, undoubtedly I will always say, remember, your homework tonight is to read chapter 4. I find that I'm saying it again and again. What does it usually mean when teachers say things over and over or again and again? Sometimes it might mean that you have a quiz the next day, or that they really want you to notice significant information. Well, our authors do this too. Our next notice and note signpost is known as again and again. Again and again occurs when you are reading and you notice a word, a phrase, an object, or even a situation mentioned over and over. This makes you stop and ask yourself, why does this keep showing up again and again? The answer will probably tell you about the theme, the conflict, or they might foreshadow upcoming events. Like when I tell my students to read chapter 4 again and again, I tell them over and over, that foreshadows a quiz coming up the next day. So let's take out our notice and note again and again handout you received today in class. Well, I took quite a few notes. I actually think this might be my favorite signpost of all of them. I love patterns. So again and again occurs in a book when something is mentioned over and over. It's human nature to mention important things again and again. So we shouldn't be surprised that we see it in books too. Think about the book The Giver. I want you to think about one word that was repeated over and over and over. Release. Yes, it was talked about again and again and again. And we know that that word release had a lot to do with the conflict, the lesson learned, or the theme, and it foreshadowed events to come. So when you notice again and again, words or phrases being said over and over, you need to ask yourself, why is the author bringing this up? Why might an author mention something more than once? To signify its importance? So now let's look at passage 1 together. This comes from Writing Freedom by Pam Munoz Ryan. So the character Charlotte is talking with an older character, Vern. I know, Miss Charlotte, said Vern. You got to do what your heart tells you. The second scene, Charlotte is remembering Vern's words to her. She could still hear Vern saying, you got to do what your heart tells you. One thing I notice is that the first example comes from page 38, and the second example comes from page 40. Those are really close together. A lot of the time when we see again and again, the events happen very close in proximity as far as the novel goes. The third scene, Charlotte returns to Vern's words once again. She took out her kerchief and dipped the corner in water and wiped her face. What had Vern told her to do? She had to do what her heart tells her. That's on page 99. So 3 instances in which Miss Charlotte is remembering Vern's words. You have to do, or you got to do, what your heart tells you. Sure, you picked that out, and I want you to ask, why do you think this is coming up again and again? The author helps us to see the importance of this phrase by telling it to us over and over. So what do you think it means? Why is it significant? Take a moment to jot down why this advice from Vern shows up again and again. Feel free to pause the video. So now let's discuss. These words are repeated because Charlotte must have had some tough choices to make, and the advice on following her own heart will help her. It's important to note that this was also a Words of the Wiser signpost. Vern is an older character giving Charlotte advice. We'll talk about Words of the Wiser more in class, but I think that it's good to know that that happened. Also, when you're looking for again and again, the quick tip tells us, don't worry if you can't remember where you saw the first word or phrase in the book that you're reading. Focus on why it keeps coming up again and again. That makes me think about our book 11. There are some things that are happening again and again and again. And we're not that far along in the book. This concept of a dog, Alex wanting a dog, is showing up over and over and over. Why might the author be doing this? Why is this important? It's also important to note that again and again could also show up as a flashback or a memory moment when the main character remembers the advice that was given. So it doesn't matter if you say that it's a memory moment again and again or Words of the Wiser. What's important is that you are able to pick out the things that are significant as you read, so that you stop and you take notice. So now let's flip to passage 2. This comes from the book Maniac Magee. They say Maniac was born in a dump. They say his stomach was a cereal box and his heart a sofa spring. They say he kept an 8-inch cockroach on a leash and that rats stood guard over him while he slept. They say if you knew he was coming and you sprinkled salt on the ground and he ran over it, within 2 or 3 blocks, he would be as slow as everybody else. They say. So what is the again and again phrase? They say. Take a moment and write down why you think this is important. What might be the significance of this phrase coming up again and again? Well, as a teacher, I know when my students come, well, they said, well, they did. Who is they? So many times we don't even know who they are, which probably tells us that they aren't real, that they say these are just rumors, tall tales, exaggerations, things that are far-fetched. So perhaps this they say about Maniac Magee were just rumors that were exaggerated, things that aren't true about his personality. The again and again signpost often gives us foreshadowing. Foreshadowing is a hint that authors give us about something that will happen later in the story. So keep your eyes open. Look for the signpost again and again. Happy reading!